coefficient of expansion is, and melt a paddle like I did with the ribbon cane, and then glob the same size of the mystery glass onto that paddle. If you pull it straight out and it cools off and it stays straight, those are the same coefficient of expansion. If you pull it straight out and it cools off and it's bent or curved, which you can't really see the curve too much in this one, but it was pretty curved, they are not compatible. That glass on the inside cooled off faster than the glass on the outside of the curve. So the glass on the inside is the higher coefficient of expansion. And if you use glasses that are not compatible together, they will eventually pull themselves apart. Sometimes pretty spectacularly. Wow. So I guess it's 3:05, so we can go ahead and get started on the next class, which is going to be Murrini. And second, let me check something real quick. So it's going to go fairly quickly. I don't know that we'll have a whole hour, but we might. But we're going to talk about Murrini and making them and the basics to applying them. It's a little cold in the studio today, so applying might be fun. Usually I'll keep it on a hot plate or something to keep the Murrini warm so it doesn't thermal shock. But it's over in my metal clay station right now. And so we're going to try to wing it by putting some of these on the front of my marver. See if it gets warm enough. So Murrini in mosaics, there's a lot of beads out there in the ancient time that have the Murrini. And it's not as difficult or mysterious to make as people think it is. The basic beads that you see in Roman times or even like Italian, they have the bullseye with a couple of examples of Murrini. These are all, well, some of them I made. Commercial Murrini. This is a common style that you would find on Roman beads or Viking beads. This is bullseye also. This is a basic flower design. This is a little bit more complex. And this is one I made using a optic mold that I have given away. So the first thing we're going to do is learn how to make the basic bullseye. Then I'll show you how to do a basic flower. And then I'll show you how to use a mold. This was a freehand heart Murrini. And one side, when I was making it, did not quite hit the mold. It did. Apparently I got a little bit of a cut in the base color. And so every single one of them has this little bitty divot in the side. And they do that. They do that whenever you're not careful. So you have to be careful when you're building it, because one little mistake will go all the way through that cane generally. And that's one of the really cool things about glass, is it maintains that complex structure no matter how far down you pull it. If I pulled this down to a tiny, tiny little size, it would still have this green heart in it with the one little divot where I wasn't paying attention. Because if you look at the small end, you can still see the heart with the one little divot in the side. So you can make it short and pull it all the way out to nothing, and you'll still have that same design. And the greatest master I can think of in making mosaic cane or Murrini is Lauren Stump. And he did the Last Supper in mosaic. So you can get really, really detailed, and he could pull that down to this size and it would still be the full Last Supper. But that's one of the really cool things and properties of glass. So what we'll do first is we're going to make a simple bullseye cane. And it's only going to be 2 colors. It's going to be black and white. And we'll pull it out, and when it cools, I will cut it. So for this class, we're going to use my stainless steel chopsticks, but we're also going to use some cabochon mandrels for pulling. And that's because it gives you a wider base for the thicker cane, and you can pull it consistently. Because if you pull it at a point, sometimes you can kind of distort a little bit. If you pull it flat all the way out, it maintains a consistent thickness, and you're less likely to distort your design pulling it out. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty then. See if the wind cooperates. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my cane. And it's going to be my first color is going to be black, because I want that to be the center. And I'm going to heat it up so it doesn't thermal shock in my face. I'll get that. And we're going to work with relatively small canes today because of time constraints. The really cool thing about it is, if you were going to make a face, mosaic face, you can do that using all of the techniques I'm about to show you, because it all comes back down to stacking the cane, melting it together, pulling it out, stacking up the next layer, and you just build it from the inside out, or from the bottom to the top, whichever you prefer. So I'm heating that up. I don't want it to get floppy hot. I just want it to be about 1 inch to 1/2 inch long. I want it to be relatively warm so the glass will stick. And then I'm just going to wrap the white around the black. So I'm going to encase the black with the white. You want to kind of try to keep your white a consistent thickness as you wrap it, so that you don't have like a big little. It gives you a fairly normal or a consistent size wall. If we have time, I'll show you how I build the spiral knot Murrini. Just want to fill that divot because I want it to be consistent. I'm going to build it all the way out to the end. And this is just to build a really quick bullseye Murrini. This is not for, you know, every Murrini you make, you're not going to make this way. So I encased that much in white. I'm going to melt that in nice. Make sure I didn't miss any spots. Make sure it's fairly consistent. Marver it smooth a little bit. Flatten the tip. Okay, now I'm going to add the next layer. Go back with, let's go with red. I'm keeping this warm as I heat this up. Now I'm going to encase the white and the red. And if you're doing a really big cane, some people will put parts of it in the kiln while they work on the other parts of it. But I'm working on the presumption that you don't have a kiln available. I want everybody to be able to make a Murrini, whether you have all the equipment or not. And if you don't have all the fancy doodads, you can still make Murrini. So I'm going to heat that up, make it nice and thorough heated. I'm going to marver it relatively flat. I'm going to heat it up a little bit. And I'm going to move it out to the warming area, keep it warm. Ah, you're a shocky little piece of glass, aren't you? I have some shocky black and it is just shooting raw everywhere. Which is why you don't point it at your face. Gives the meaning, a different meaning to I saw that. Now the problem is right now, so I'm encasing black over red. They're the same color when they're hot. Hope I don't miss a spot. Man, this black is stiff. That all up. Then I'm going to take a clear. I'll put my clear down. I'm going to take clear and I'm going to cap that with clear. I'll probably use about a 1/4 inch of the clear on the end. I'm not going to do the full 1/4 inch right now because I'm in the interest of time. So now I'm going to start heating up my cabochon mandrel. And the way I do that is I usually put it right here at the base of the heat, so it gets most of the heat. I'm also starting to heat up my gather, because I want that cabochon mandrel to be nice and red hot, consistently over the whole front. And I'm going to push it right onto that clear lens I just made. And I'm going to try to heat up that join, make sure it's all joined. I want a nice good join there. So I have a nice solid join all the way around. I'm going to start heating up the back end of this so I can remove this rod of glass. So now I have it completely on my cabochon mandrel. And I'm going to put a little heat right in there. I think I've missed a whole spot with the black. I'm not going to worry about it right now. It's going to make me crazy, but I'm not going to worry about it. Normally I would cap that with clear, but I'm just going to flatten it down right now. I'm not really worried that I'll have some loss of the color. I want to heat this cabochon mandrel, get my gather nice and warm. You notice I'm trying to keep it to where it maintains its shape. It's not droopy or soupy, but it is warm. I'm going to heat this cabochon mandrel red hot, and I'm going to touch it, and I'm going to work in, make sure I have a good solid seal all the way around. Heat up this end because I don't want either end to be cold. And I'm going to put all the heat into the middle of this gather. And I'm pushing it together. I'm not pulling it apart. I'm trying to maintain the same distance, and I'm turning them together because you don't want to twist what's inside. Once it's a taffy consistency, pull it out of the flame just like you do with your twisties. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pull. And you don't want to pull too fast because you don't want tiny little Murrini. So you want to try to keep a good thick consistency, and then heat the back of the cabochon mandrel. You heat it up, and then pull as you heat the other end. So you're heating them both up and pulling. Maintain that positive pressure. You're not pulling too hard. I'm going to heat this side up and pull. Whoop, see, pulled it right off. Now I'm going to go ahead and let it cool. Setting it on my graphite marver down there on the desktop. And I'm going to let that cool. And then I'm going to use my tile nippers. I have these tile nippers to cut the Murrini. I'm going to cut this fat end off.
Okay, so watching that was super sexy. Watching you go through that process of making that Murrini was astonishing. Well done, ma'am.
Thank you. And trying to I have so much stuff on my desk, it's making me crazy. So one of the things I recommend when cutting these is to have a bag that you put the Murrini in when you cut. So when it shoots off, it doesn't go anywhere. So you're working inside like a gallon bag. It contains the Murrini, keeps it from flying all over the place. That is still pretty warm. But so you have a black center with a white round and then a red over that and then a black ring. I'm going to cut another piece of that fairly thin. In theory. Because it shoots all over your desk when you cut it if you don't have it contained. Yeah, I have no idea where that went. Okay, so I have a few pieces for applying. So that's how you do a basic bullseye. If you don't need a whole lot of it, if you want, I mean, I have this much usable cane to cut from this size down to this size. And that pattern will be in there all the way through. So if you want to use it, that's going to be a lot of bullseye cane. So, any questions so far? Because the next one we're going to do is going to be the flower, a basic flower, Murrini, which is almost exactly what we just did, but instead of leaving it round, once you get your core and your first level of color on there, you're going to take a cutting tool and you're going to cut a ridge into the end of, into the sides of all of that, and then you're going to fill it in with the color, and then you're going to encase it. So it will effectively, it will look like this. I think we're getting a storm here because our wind picked up a lot. But flower will look like more like that. It's hard to get this thing to focus. Focus. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and start doing that one. And it'll go a little faster again because I'm just going to build it on the rod. It's not going to be as thick, and I'm going to just do it in black and white, and then I'll show you how to encase it real fast, because I still want to show you guys how to actually, let's go ahead and do the other Viking Murrini. That way I know I make sure I have time for that. And that's the one that has you get a white, you get a core, a color in the core, and then you'll have a cross pattern, and then it'll have like a checkerboard outside of it. So we'll start again with this thick black rod because it works real well. Woo, shucky. We're gonna make a nice big gather out of that. So it's nice and consistent. There we go. Pull down a little bit. So once you have your core warmed up, you know what? Let's do it with the green. I changed my mind. We're going to do it with the green. We're going to make the green gather. And this one I'm actually going to make a little bit thicker for the gather. My marker keeps sticking to my Fitbit. Okay. So I have a bit of a gather. I'm going to go over it real quick with the white. And in fact, I'm going to transfer it to the black. So I'm making a punty out of the black because the green is thermal shocking at the base and I don't want it to pop off while I'm working on it. So I'm going to make a gather and then I'm going to stick it right to the end of this black rod because the black rod's super thick and nice and pretty stiff. So I'm going to move this green onto the end of that. I'm going to marver that back into a barrel shape. So I just moved the green to the end of the black. More stability. So now I'm going to quickly let this green cool down a little bit and warm up the the white. I'm going to encase this green and a very thin wrap of white. That's just because I like the contrast. You don't have to do this step. Artistic license and all that. So now I've got the green cased by the white. And I'm going to add red stripes. And you can either do 4 and 4, or you can do multiple. It really goes back to what you want in your design. But the main thing is to try to maintain a consistent thickness on your striping. So I'm going to do one here, and then I'm going to do one here in the red. Go here with the red. It's getting a little melty, so I'm going to add another red over here. And then I'll build this one back up. Make sure when you're building your stripes, you're touching the back of the other one so it doesn't like fall in. You want to maintain consistency all the way across. So I got those on there. Don't melt them in. I'm going to add yellow. That stripey off the end of it. Okay. Again, you're keeping this warm. Don't get it melty because you don't want those stripes to melt in. But because you're going to fill in between the stripes with your contrasting color. So in this case, I'm going to fill it in with the yellow. Make sure you push that yellow all the way down so you don't get air bubbles in there. So I'll add a stripe there. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add the stripe here. Then I'm going to come over here, keeping it warm. I'm going to add a stripe there. So you're adding your stripes in alongside your first color to kind of bolster it up and keep it from melting in, because you want those colors to stay above. You don't want them to melt in or you'll lose the design. So now I'm going to start the middle colors, and I'm doing the other side right up against that stripe again. And if you don't have enough molten glass, just hold it there and let it heat up and then swipe. And let it go on to the next one. Push it in there. Like I said, make sure you're filling it in. You don't want any air pockets in there. Your Murrini will pop. So be sure to push that glass in there. Sure you don't miss any spots. Okay, so now I'm going to start melting it. I'm going to skip the clear part where I cap it and clear, but you really want to do that when you can, because it keeps you from wasting the Murrini you built. And it just, I'll smash that flat. Make sure you get that nice and flat, and then keep it warm as you heat up your cabochon mandrel. Again, get that cabochon mandrel nice and red hot. You can make a good bond with the glass. Heat the glass up nice and hot. You want to get a nice good bond with that. And you can start melting it off on this end. Remember, you don't want to twist. Just want to pull so you don't twist your design. You want to keep your stripes straight, not twisted. And I'm going to start heating up the other cabochon mandrel. Flatten this down a little bit. Start heating it up. I heat up this cabochon mandrel. Some people call them punties because that's actually the process of what you're doing is punting your pulling. So you can call them punties. I call them cabochon mandrels because that seems to be what I use them primarily for. I'm going to heat up that center nice and warm. Gonna pull a little bit, count 1, 2, 3, 4, and start pulling slowly because you want to maintain a consistent thickness. Don't twist, just pull. Got a little thin there. Okay, and I'm going to just set it down. I could pull it more, but I don't feel like taking that time that it would take to keep it warmer and pull it and warm it and pull it and warm it and pull it because we need to get on to the next part of the class. So I'm kind of rushing my processes a little bit in the interest of time. But you have your Murrini on there. I'm cutting it free. So it looks a little rushed because it is a little rushed, but it gives you that design, which is also another common design you find in ancient beads. So now we're going to go ahead and make a bead, and I'm going to show you how to put them on your bead. Ooh, they're nice and warm. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to apply your Murrini to your beads. We'll see what time we have left after that. And we can make different ones if you want to, or we can discuss different designs. I'll show you how to use a mold real quick after I mold is super easy. It takes less time than building it up manually, which is why people use them. The mold I have right now is from CG Rollers, and it's just got the basic shapes in it. And it's real convenient if you're making the spiral bead because of this one right here. I mean, the spiral Murrini, because of that one right there makes it nice and convenient. So you would just heat up your glass. You want to get a really good size gather, because you want to try to fill the cavity as much as possible. And you're going to just, it's hard to do it on a slant, so I can show y'all. You push it in. I'm going to try to straighten that up a little bit. If it gets wampus, just heat up the rod and then put it back in the mold and push. Try to keep your rod centered, and that gives you the shape. And then you would just encase that shape and pull. And that's how you make the Murrini with the mold. So we're going to go ahead and make a bead. Let's see, we'll make Make a brown bead since that's not a color we used on anything. Not brown. For the people that are beginners, heating up my mandrel, and I'm going to make a gather. These are going to be simple, quick, dirty, ugly beads. They're not going to be fantastically shaped and balanced and perfect ends or anything like that. They're just going to be display beads. So heating up my mandrel out in the warming area, warming up my glass, making my gather. And I usually make my gather slightly smaller than the bead I want to make. So I'll make a gather. 90 degrees, touch it, roll it, mark it with the bead. Enough. So I will use my tweezers instead of my normal pliers because you can get a better grip on your Murrini. So I'll have the base bead. I'll let it cool down a little bit. I'll pick up a Murrini with my tweezers, try to hold on to it, and I'll superheat a spot on the bead. Then I will put the, Gary, I will catch you. Superheat the bead again. Flash the Murrini in the hot heat because cold don't stick to hot. Sit it on the surface of the bead and I push it in. Try to push it down flat. You don't want it to be on there crooked. So it's on there. Then you're going to get your marver in your hand. You're going to heat it and you're going to tap it and you're going to heat it and you're going to tap it. And the reason for that is because if you don't, it's going to draw in towards the center. So right now it's maintaining that core and then you have your design. If I were to just heat it on the surface of the bead without flattening it down and tapping it down, then it will pull into the center and change the design, which is cool if that's what you're going for. So once you get it in there, if you want it to be flush, I just heat it up a little bit, tap it down, heat it up a little bit, tap it down. And then I'll take my clear. I have it melted into where I want it. All right, everybody's just going to be all shocky because it's getting cold in here. Heat up my clear. And I will just dab a whole dab of clear over the top of it and melt it in. What that does is it creates a lens. You can skip the clear and just leave it on there. But it creates a lens over the Murrini. So again, you want to heat your spot. We'll do one of the black ones. Pick up your Murrini, flash it in the heat, superheat your bead. Flash it, push it in, push it into the surface of the bead. Feed it, tap it, feed it, tap it. This one, I'm not going to put the clear over the top of it. But by pushing it into the surface of the bead, you don't smear it. It doesn't end up going all over the surface of the bead. And that's basically how you attach a Murrini. Do I have any questions?
Oops. Yeah, I actually have one. So actually, let me...
I'm sorry? I can't hear you. Hello?
Yeah. Sorry. So I make checkerboard Murrini, but I'm having problems with it with it spreading out. So you're saying you're just pushing it down? Yeah, I want to do.
Yeah, if your checkerboards are nice and square when you get ready to lay them down, you just want to make sure your base bead is soft enough that you can push them into the surface so it doesn't round out, because your glass wants to be a sphere, and if you give it time to melt, it's going to round out. But if you push it into the surface of the bead, then it should help it maintain that square.
How are you then going back to your to the base shape without it spreading? I guess is the question.
I would use a mold to shape it back after I've got, if it's something as intricate as a checkerboard, I would use the molds to mold it back into shape, to push it without rounding it, because just the nature of glass when it's molten wants to round out. So
Yeah.
the only way to combat that is to force it into that shape. And let your Murrini cool before you shape your bead. So you're not pushing your Murrini, you're only pushing the surrounding glass.
Okay.
That might work better with the cap of the clear, a very thin cap of clear over the Murrini to help it stiffen.
Yeah, I tried that, but I think some of my problem is just not enough practice.
I've had a huge problem even making checkerboard Murrini. I've ended up having to do it in a kiln and fusing it together instead of trying to build it on a gather.
I didn't. What I did was I started off with a rod and built it and just added segments. Like took my snippers, cut off lengths of the same size, and just fused segments of it in stripes, and then compacted it as I went. And I was actually doing that. I was actually, the first time I did that, I was actually working over a charcoal flame rather than a burner. So
yeah, sometimes that actually lends itself to more warm period type beads, because it's a different dynamic in how the bead is built and how it's shaped.
Yeah.
You know, you do shape it similarly, but the dynamics of how it works is a little bit different because melting time is different, your glass is moving different. At least my experience on the ones that didn't explode.
Yeah, I had some of that too.
Yeah, I've been doing this long enough that most of the kilns I built or were exploding kilns. We didn't have a whole lot of information at the time.
Yeah, I'm part of the dark group, so
oh yeah, I got a lot of my research from you guys.
yeah, but I'm the only one trying to do. They were more interested in the kilns, and I was more interested in the fancy beads. So we didn't always have the
awesome. Well,
design.
Well, thank you guys for doing that research. All right, Well, I think that's it then, and I'm going to go ahead and clear out so the next class has time to get set up and ready to go. If you have any questions or if you want to talk to me offline, you can reach me on Facebook. I'm Laura Meissner. I think it's my picture up there right now. It's either me or a dog. So look me up and let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you guys
Me,
for
thank you
joining
so
in.
much. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you for hosting it for us. I'll talk to you guys later.